Hello and welcome to another Practical IT Live on Sunday, the 23rd of January, 2022. Hopefully, I've got something interesting planned for you today. I'm going to wait for at least one or two more people to trickle into chat and we'll get things rolling. So, if you are here and watching, please head on into the chat and say hello. Good morning, David. Welcome. All right. Oh, we're up to two. That's good. All right. So, today I wanted to talk about an alternative method of installing Zentyal server, which, as you might know from previous videos I've done, it's a Samba Active Directory server system, basically, that integrates your Samba Active Directory, mail, DNS, and all the stuff that you would normally use to run an Active Directory, and you don't have to pay Microsoft any fees in order to do so. By default, the ISO image that they give you for installing this installs a desktop environment. And you know, it's not really necessary in my opinion, because you're going to manage this remotely anyways. You're not going to be sitting down in front of the server, and many people are going to run it as a virtual server. And so I came across the instructions, and up to this point I don't believe I really knew that they existed, although I never looked. But I came across the instructions for installing Zentyal on top of an existing Ubuntu server install. So what I've done to prep for this, excuse me, what I've done to prep for this is to install a brand new Ubuntu 20.04.3 server. And I'll go ahead and bring that on screen now. So this is running in Proxmox. And if we look at summary, I gave it 4 virtual CPU cores, 4 gigs of RAM, and a 55 gigabyte virtual hard drive, which for what we're doing today is probably overkill, but I'm hoping that this will sort of form the base for additional demos and other experimentation. So this is what we're going to use to go through the instructions today. I am actually connected to this machine in a terminal from my Mac, and hopefully this will make it easier to read for everybody. Good morning, Chris. If you would like me to bump the size of the text up another degree or two, let me know in chat and I will accommodate. But the main thing I wanted to do today was to go through this install. And so in case anybody's interested in doing this themselves, the URL for the instructions that I'm using, I am putting into chat right now. And so we'll go ahead and kick this off and get started with it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to download the installer script. using wget. And just that quickly, it's installed. Now, of course, you don't necessarily want to blindly run an installer that you downloaded from a website. So you could go through this and take a look and just see what it's doing. And although I think they could probably have put in some additional documentation in here, this is pretty straightforward, even if you are not a fluent bash script person. There are a series of functions that are going to do different things to get this installed for you. It's going to check the requirements. It's going to add the Zentyal repository. And it's going to optionally install the GUI. And then it should continue through the rest of this. So functions are called here at the bottom: check requirements, Zentyal repository, and Zentyal installation. So from a cursory look through this, I did not notice anything out of the ordinary. I do not claim to be the be-all, end-all expert in bash scripting. So, you know, if you found something when you go through it that seems out of place, let me know and let the Zentyal people know, because you know, knowledge is power, right? So the second step in the process is changing the permissions on the script file and making it executable. So your basic sudo chmod u+x and then the file name, and it prompts you for your password. Alright, and then we're going to run the installer. And right off the bat, it's going to ask you if you want to install the graphical environment. And this refers to the desktop. This is not asking about the web management interface. This is asking about the desktop specifically. And we're going to say no. And so as you can see, it's going through the checks. And it will install some things, and then we'll have a working system. So it's importing the keys here, and it's going to remove some packages and install a bunch of packages. And hopefully we'll end up with a working system here. I see we're up to 4 people watching today. If you're watching and you're not in chat, feel free to join us. We don't bite. Well, I don't bite. I can't speak for everybody else, but I'm assuming their bark is worse than their bite. While we're waiting for this, one thing I did want to let people know about, if you've not followed the updates, there was a minor patch update released for Rescuezilla. on the 2nd of January. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in a previous live stream, but that again, since Rescuezilla is free, go ahead and grab a copy of the latest version and give it some testing, at least on some VMs, and make sure it's going to do what you want it to do. So I thought I'd throw that out there and make sure people knew about it. I'm very interested in the project, and I'm looking forward to see what the developer does to enhance it. I believe there's a release coming next month, and then another bigger release coming after the release of Ubuntu 22.04 in April. So Ubuntu comes out in April, so I'd expect sometime in May or the very beginning of June that we'll see a bigger release of Rescuezilla based on things that the developer said publicly. And so, you know, if you have used Rescuezilla and got some use out of it, you know, that would be a good project to support. So, let's see. That may be a good backup for my Ubuntu backup domain controller I have running on a Raspberry Pi. The one I have keeps dropping out of my domain. Yeah, I would give it a try. I would give it a try. I may have done something wrong setting up Samba. Yeah, I have set up Samba manually several times over the years, and in fact, I own the Samba for Dummies book. I believe that I purchased that one before Samba 4 came out, so I'm not sure it's all that useful anymore. But I did, you know, early on in working with Linux, do some Samba manual setup experiments, and I always found it to be a little finicky, but I'm not I've never had to build up a domain on Windows from scratch. I've always come in as more of an administrator and doing maintenance and keeping the system humming along. But you know, it's all good. So, all right. So we've got our install done, and it's telling us to go to the IP address on port 8443, and we've got our IP address right here. And let's see. And if we go to advanced and accept the risk, hey, look at that. One thing that they could do to make this nicer is add a dark mode option, but you know, okay. So it's prompting us to do the initial setup for the web interface, and we'll say continue. And so of course we're going to do domain controller, DNS. We're going to do, we'll install the DHCP server, antivirus, certificate authority. I don't know, throw FTP on here. And why not? We'll throw radius on as well. I should do an experiment of hooking one of my SSIDs for Wi-Fi up to the Radius server and do WPA2 Enterprise on that. And then we'll do install, and we'll have to wait a while again. And so it's showing the packages that are going to be installed, and we can go ahead and say continue, and it will continue doing its thing. All right. So I did a trial run of this. Do that. I did a trial run of this a couple of nights ago, and I thought, oh, okay, well, this is quick to install. And you know, I've seen in the recent versions of Ubuntu that you're supposed to be able to join to an Active Directory domain during the install process. Well, I didn't get that part to work, but I think it's because of how I've got some of my network settings configured currently. And if this were on a physical machine with 2 network cards or with VLANs configured, what have you, and you were letting Zentyal control the DHCP, I would imagine that it would be much, much easier to get Ubuntu installed on this. So I may do another install on another VM and put 2 network cards in it, and you know, similar to what I do with Fog Server, have 1 network card on the production network for being able to get to the internet and get updates, and the other network is just strictly for the domain network, and everything would then pass through Zentyal before going out to the internet, if it needs to go out to the internet. So all right, so is this supposed to be a replacement for Active Directory? If so, what about group policy support? So yes, Samba 4, after some fighting between the Samba developers, I guess, and the EU was involved, and Microsoft released a bunch of documentation. So theoretically, this is a drop-in replacement for Active Directory, including the fact that you can install the RSAT packages on a Windows 10 machine and use that to set things like group policies in Zentyal. Some of that is a little past what I've done with it for my particular use cases, but I'm running a primarily Linux and Mac OS network. I do have a couple Windows machines, but not to the point where I have felt the need to put them in a domain. And so Zentyal is something I use periodically, but um, at the same time, it's one of those things where I know there's a lot more in the line of capabilities that I haven't scratched the surface of yet. So, all right, so we're at network interfaces. So, we are going to set this. External interfaces connect to networks that are not under your control, typically the internet. Traffic coming from external networks is not trusted by default. And so we're going to call this an internal network because I do have control of the local network. I'll just say next. And the network for external interfaces is going to be configured with DHCP. And we'll just accept this Zentyal-domain.lan. And this is going to be a standalone server at this point. So one thing that I've thought about doing with Zentyal, if I can get an actual, if the library does their renovation and we get the actual server room happening, which is part of the renovation plans, but this is probably another 2, 3, 5 years off. One thing I would like is a backup domain controller on that network. Makes me a little nervous only having the one server doing domain stuff, but we don't currently make so much use of the Active Directory capabilities, and that's kind of a back and forth with management type of thing. But it's all right. It's on my plan. Good morning, Tony. Welcome. Let's see. I used Sigma NAS with Samba 4. There are some advanced AD functions that do not work, but everything I need. Yeah, so Sigma NAS is a little different. I'm not sure. Yeah, with that being a BSD base, seems like there were some quirks with Samba on BSD. Those might have been corrected by now, but at one point I know there were quirks with Samba on BSD. So you're absolutely right. Never run a single domain controller. If I had a budget and I had a server room and the server didn't currently live on my desk, yes. So right now I am trying to keep everything documented such that I could rebuild quickly. And in all honesty, for the size of our staff, Active Directory is overkill to begin with. For what we're doing, a NAS would give us everything we need. And I've toyed with some different ideas. We do have to keep a few things, but I just I think it's overkill and it's more maintenance than what it needs to be for the size of our environment. So Samba on my Sigma NAS seems to run fine. It was broken in an earlier release, late 2019, but they fixed it. Good deal. All right, so we're at 52%. I guess at this point, oh, let's see, another comment. My Ubuntu backup domain controller running on a Pi keeps disconnecting, however, every month or so. That is odd. I guess I would be interested in some additional details on how you set that up on the Pi. Um, are you running like Diet Pi as the base, or are you running the full graphical install of Raspberry Pi OS as the base? Um, and it just seems odd that it would disconnect, and if it's approximately every month that it disconnects, are there some logs that would tip you off to why? Have you explored Synology's Active Directory package? I haven't yet, but Willie seems to like it a lot as an alternative to Windows Active Directory. I have not personally, because both of my Synology boxes are on the older side, shall we say, and they were not high-end Synology boxes when I bought them. I should take a look and see if I can do a demo or something with that. Maybe I'll have to take a look at Willie's videos and see, because I think I saw a few. It might have been Willie, it might have been Chris from Crosstalk Solutions that did some Synology Active Directory type videos. So that's definitely worth looking into. So let's see. Ubuntu server on the Pi. Interesting. Logs don't show much other than connection lost. And you need to reboot it. I don't know. I guess as a poor man's solution to this, until you could figure out a longer term better solution, I just schedule a cron job to reboot the server every 2 weeks. It reminds me of advice I was given in early versions of Windows Server to keep everything up and running and avoiding some blue screen issues, but that's a whole other story. I may have some of the Samba options on Ubuntu version set wrong. Just need a lot of time to work on it. For now, I just reboot. I may put a reboot in cron. Yep, absolutely. I don't think Zentyal runs on the Pi. That's the issue you're going to run into with this particular solution. I believe well, maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. That's talking about a Raspberry Pi 2. no, this was 2015. There are no ARM-based packages for the Zentyal modules. But David, you're an old Unix guy. You could, an old school Unix guy. You could build the source code and custom install it. You know, it'd be like a throwback. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's look in the past year. I don't believe, though, that there's been any movement on that. So I think we're still limited to x64 systems for Zentyal. If memory serves. So you're really trying to reactivate some of my neural nodes. Well, you know, I have to admit, back in my early days of using Linux, I did in fact recompile the Linux kernel. That was an adventure that took several hours on the hardware I was running at the time. But I've done it, which is more than I can say about a lot of Linux users these days, especially newer Linux users. But yeah, it's not something that I really feel the need to revisit. And I don't know, the whole compiling from source code thing. I still have flashbacks from one of my college classes where the instructor was just dead set on having us install everything from source, compiling it ourselves and installing it that way in the name of security, because yeah, after a couple of C++ classes, we're supposed to be able to read all the source code and make complete sense of it. And yeah. I used to recompile the Slackware kernel a lot 27 years ago. Right. Well, let's see. I got into Linux in about 97. But what was the first system I ran Linux on? I think it was a 486 DX4 120 megahertz system. And it did literally take hours to compile that Linux kernel on that machine. And the whole reason I did it, or one of the reasons I did it, is because at the time there was not support in the kernel for the particular sound card I had. And working on a limited budget, I thought it would be easier to recompile the kernel and insert the kernel modules than to buy a different sound card. But you know, it's one of those things. At the time, you know, a lot of new Linux users were going through, and you know, I've since come to the realization that when I buy or build a computer, I do so going into it with the knowledge that it will sooner or later likely run Linux, even if it ships with Windows. And so I make sure that, you know, the chipset used for networking is an Intel chipset. So Intel network cards, Intel wireless, both of which are very, very well supported in the Linux kernel by default. In fact, I got this nice little nondescript brown box this week, and I caught a deal, and it is an Intel AX200 based chipset. Well, I suppose I should go to the bigger screen for that. It's an AX200 based chipset. I've never heard of this eDupe or EDUP or whatever brand, but it is a Wi-Fi 5, the AC Wi-Fi. It has a Bluetooth module on it and all that kind of stuff. But my thought process being, I've got another desktop. I can get another Wi-Fi card in it that will be easily detected on Linux. So let's see. My PC was 100 megahertz 46. First PC I built. Oh, 50 megahertz. Yeah. And people call them the quote unquote good old days, but so I don't know if anybody out there was at all a Commodore 64 user back in the day. But I recently watched a video on a guy in Europe. I think he's Swedish, but he's living in Luxembourg currently. He has basically reverse engineered the various custom chips that Commodore used in the Commodore, not 64, the 128. And he had a couple of other guys. There were 3 guys total in this video, and one of them was Bill Herd, Herd, like a cattle herd. That he was one of the original engineers at Commodore that worked on the Commodore 128. And so you can now buy not all the reproduced FPGA based chips yet, but you can buy a new Commodore 128 motherboard. New motherboards for the Commodore 64 have been available for years. But in another video, this same guy, he has, I believe it was the same guy, the European man, he has a keyboard project. It's a mechanical keyboard to go into a Commodore 64. And through some interesting discovery, he found out that you can build the new plate for the keyboard, for the new custom keyboard, and use Legos. There's a Lego block that actually fits the stems for the Cherry MX switches that he used in this, and apparently there's an adapter to also fit the original stems that Commodore used on the original keyboards. But you can basically build a new keyboard, or if you're refurbishing an old machine, you can replace the keycaps with something new, which I thought was kind of an interesting idea. You know, especially for a machine that, you know, there were at one point 30 million units out there. Okay, well, that's not good. Huh. Okay. Um. uh. Oop. Well, maybe it's gone down for a reboot. Host is down. All right, so let's come back over here. Take a look. That is in fact running. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. I was feeling nostalgic, so I thought I'd look at some Commodore videos and um, looked at some Tandy videos for the color computer, which some of those are pretty interesting because, yeah, they've done some work to replace the graphics chip in the Tandy Color Computer 3 and given it a 256 color mode, and this is on a 8-bit computer that came out in 1986-ish. So yeah, good times. Okay, so this did not happen when I ran this the other night. Huh. I got no load on the server, basically. Why? Host is down. Well, obviously it's not down. And I can still get out to the internet from that machine. And 208. Oh, well, that's not where I wanted to do that. And I can ping my Mac. That's interesting. I'm not entirely sure why that is happening. But what if we just... Nope. Doesn't like me today. The computer gods are not smiling on me. So let's reboot the machine. Worst case scenario, I bring back up my machine from the other day. Always have a backup plan. Or as Hannibal Smith from the A-Team would say, I love it when a plan comes together. Failed to start enable something or another there. Okay. type this morning either. All right, let's see. Stopping local bind 9 via resolve conf. Stop bind 9 domain server. Stopped FTP server. Oh, it's stopping them and then it's restarting them. Okay, let's see. Finish Zentyal start stop task. All right. No route to host. Very, very interesting. I probably screwed something up during install that I didn't do the other night. So we'll shut this one down. And we will bring up the other one. Hopefully in the process we don't bring down Proxmox. Because this is not running on my big Proxmox server. Alright, so let's see what we can do. There we go. That one's down. 2001 is coming up. Minor glitch. We'll work with it. Believe that's what I used on here. Maybe. There we go. 176. Unable to connect. Well, I'm having all kinds of issues today. We'll try. Okay. All right, so I'm just having all kinds of fun. I'm open to ideas if anybody's got any. Or maybe that wasn't completely booted. Well, we'll give it another minute and we'll try it again. Okay, that's 176. There we go. Alright, so this should be what we expected here. Make that a little bit larger. Okay, so we're on core version 7.0.4. We've got all the updates run. And I've even got the certificate authority on here. or certification authority, as they call it. Did create one certificate when I was playing with this the other night. That should be an interesting module to play with as I go forward with this. So I attempted to install this, or install an Ubuntu VM, and I did not have much luck getting it connected during the install process to Zentyal. So I thought, okay, well, I will finish up the install and we'll attempt to do it after the install. And so there is an additional package called SSSD. And that's the System Security Services daemon. And so what this does is it allows you to connect to an Active Directory server. Well, I got this partially working. And so it showed connected. And if we come into users and computers, this jammy AD entry, let's just go ahead and do that one maybe. So jammy AD was this Ubuntu box or VM that I attempted to get connected. And the odd part of the whole thing is that it showed connected, but it would not let me log into the graphical interface using a user from Active Directory, from Samba Active Directory. And so I do have several users available here. But yeah, it's rather perplexing. The logs did not show anything. That was one of the first things I checked to see if there was a handshake gone wrong or some other messaging that would give me a clue to figuring out this mystery. But that did not provide me with much to go on. But the interesting thing is that in the Ubuntu system, it would, I think I destroyed that VM already. So in the on the login screen, when I would attempt to log in to that machine via Samba Active Directory, and yes, you've got to use the old school like NT4 paradigm for username at domain to do the login, which isn't the end of the world by any stretch, but it would fail to log in, but it would show the user as one of the available users on the login screen. So it's like 95% there, and just that last 5% that is somehow keeping it from making that full connection and logging in. So, let's see, and I don't have a Windows VM on here, or else I would just use a Windows machine to demonstrate that this is in fact working. Wonder if I'll do that. On my bigger Proxmox machine, I should still have, I believe I've got a Windows VM. So we'll get this started up and we'll take a look. Maybe I can, if I do have a Windows VM there, I could take a quick snapshot and then we can attempt to join it to the domain. And then we will probably wrap this up. Our people watching has dropped, so that tells me that it's a good time to think about wrapping this up. And I'm sure I'll be doing additional experiments later on with Zentyal server and various physical and virtual machines connecting to it. In fact, I would like to see about connecting a NAS running Open Media Vault into Samba Active Directory on Zentyal, and see if that is worth the additional complexity of going through that. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just waiting for this other server to finish booting up. And yes, this is an old an old server. It's really needing a replacement this year. It's a little long in the tooth, but I may be having other weird issues right now with my network. Well, just for grins, I was curious to see what we're pulling down. And the download speed is great for where I'm at. Yeah, that's about where I've been for upload or lately, right around 10. Which, considering I'm streaming right now, I'm okay with it being at 9.4. I wish if I had one wish for my internet provider, it would be that they would make your upload at least 10% of what your download speed is. Half would be better, but I don't know. All right, so obviously this isn't gonna get us much further today, so I am going to go ahead and call it on the Zentyal part of things. Does anybody have any questions or comments, or any of my uh, content creators in the chat? Do any of you have a live stream or anything coming up that you want to talk about while we're here and have a few people? I'm always open to giving people a little plug and helping the cause. We're all kind of in the same boat here on YouTube and need to make sure that people are finding out about us. So, but yeah, this should be interesting. Um, I've also toyed around with possibly, depending on what I can get configured here, possibly just building out a second network, um, just to do some of these crazy experiments. Um, with the my thought process being that I do eventually want to migrate to a pfSense router firewall box, and that should help the cause overall. But I'm thinking more and more that I wanna do a draw a line in the sand and rebuild the network, just to take care of a few odd issues that I've been noticing, and um, do some cable testing and different things in the process. I do have some Cat 6 cable that I want to replace some of this Cat 5e with, and just one more step in the preparation for some uh, multi-gig network equipment later on. Currently, for my router, I am using the USG 3 port, the classic USG. So I feel like I'm hitting some limitations of that particular unit. Um, and so, while I love the Unify Wi-Fi, um, I'm okay with running a firewall that's outside of the uh, purview of that single pane of glass interface. So, um, and it will also be an excuse. I think I will bring my Unify controller back on prem. I've been running that in the cloud pretty much from the beginning, just because I wanted the experience of running it in the cloud and keeping it updated. And um, I feel like after 3 years, that is a completed experiment. And I don't know, there's just something about having it on prem that is appealing to me at the moment. So, any other questions or comments? I see David does not have a live stream until next week, and he's also been making changes to his setup. So, um, that'll be interesting. And yeah, so I think we peaked today with 7 people watching. We're down to 3 currently, but that's all right. Uh, my mini milestone that I hit this morning that was available when I got up was I'm at 3,100 subscribers now, so that's a great thing. Continuing to push forward, and just for the sake of argument, let me see if I've got my. I don't have the old 2021 YouTube statistics handy at the moment, I don't think. Let's see. YT. There we go. 2021. So at the end of 2021. Oh, let's see. It's been a while since I've looked at this. At the end of 2021, I was at 3,016. And so, yeah. That was from the 26th of December. So I'm still pretty happy with the way this seems to be increasing for me, and onward and upward, heading towards 3,500. Yeah, it seems like they're coming more quickly. 100% agree. Love the UniFi switches and Wi-Fi. However, in my new home, I'm running only UniFi switches, Edge router, 6P, and Grandstream access points, all managed under their own UIs. So yeah, I've got actually at my day job, I've got we have an Edge router 6P. I believe it's a 6P. We are running UniFi Wi-Fi access points, including actually using the now I'm having a brain fart. The captive portal, and client isolation on that VLAN. So the users that come into the library, they don't have to have a library card. They just go to log into the Wi-Fi. They have to agree to our terms, and then they're allowed to connect. This is what was set up. It's basically cloning the configuration that had been done initially with the previous access point, that this brand charges a license fee, and it was already in the works when I took over this job to replace that with UniFi. So that has so far worked out quite well for us. Usually it takes, some of the people my age and older, I guess I could say, a little getting used to. Not all of them have connected to a public Wi-Fi through a captive portal before. Some of the more tech savvy ones, I've, explained a little bit about the configuration and the, client isolation and all that, but if they're still worried about security, I have encouraged them to consider using a VPN. I understand it's not the be all end all security, but it's an additional layer, and if it makes people feel a little more comfortable, then so be it. Um, uh, so yeah, but anyways, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent. I do want to thank everybody for coming out again today, and more for the um, longevity of the video. I'm going to throw up a banner. Um, so I do have Buy Me a Coffee set up. So if people seeing this at any point in time would like to support the channel, uh, I would very much appreciate that. Sometimes you've got to supplement what the YouTube provides, and go some other avenues. But I'm hoping by the end of second quarter that I will have an A10 Mini Pro sitting on my desk over here, and that should allow me to do a few new and interesting things. I've been watching a lot of videos lately on all the crazy things you can do with the A10 Mini Pro, and some of the overlays, and yeah, it's yeah. Very, very interesting piece of equipment. I almost jumped the gun and decided to order it, but I talked myself out of that. Um, I've got part of the money set aside, and barring any vehicle maintenance that comes up or anything like that, I may just be pulling the trigger on that sooner than later. Um, Especially now that I've got the camcorder that I can use for the video part of things, and um, you know, I'm looking forward to doing some things with it. I've been planning and plotting a little bit, and um, yeah. I guess I'll just leave it there. It's all good. It's all good. If my current rate of growth continues, I will hit 5,000 in June. That would be 2 years after monetization. Below my target by about 30%. Well, still, that's not bad. Are you still looking to get a Sony ZV-E10? Um, yes, at some point. I ended up getting my hands on the Sony HDR CX405 camcorder, which I actually used for last week's live stream. I've got to do a little bit more playing with a couple of configuration things in order to get it to go the full time I do the live streams. But my understanding is that if you have it just plugged into power and not hooked to a computer, you can power it that way, bypassing the battery, and basically have an unlimited record time. So that it was a deal that kind of fell into my lap, and it was too good to pass up at about $50 under retail, especially since everybody was out of them at the time. But I guess I had an alternative. I had another motive for getting the camcorder, and that's my niece is graduating high school this year. So I want to be able to take some video of her open house and different things like that. So, yes, I'm still looking at ZVE10. Um, that would probably become the primary camera, and the camcorder would then become a handheld that I can use for other things, or an overhead, or any number of other things that could be done with that. So I'd like to get to a two camera system, and going through the ATEM, I could pretty easily do that and still do another input for overlays, and have one more input available for a second computer coming in. So I've got some plans, and we'll see what happens with that. EV10 works very well with the M2 gimbal. The next outside will look much better. So, all right. Well, I think I might have a visitor here, so I am going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you again, everybody, for coming out today, and I will be back again, same time, same place next week, 11 a.m. Eastern, and I've got something I'm cooking up for that live stream, so we'll see what happens there. On that note, I will see everybody in the next video. Have a great day and stay safe out there.